Hello, this is advanced level Postman tutorial. If you are beginner, please watch my first video and then come back to this video. In this example, we will see how to send a multi-part form type of data request or how to send a file in your Postman request. File is sent in a Postman request using a post or a put type of request. So for this example, let's keep it as a post type of request. After selecting post, click on a body option, and on body option you will find form data option. Once you select form data, following table will be loaded. So if you scroll down over on the first key, you will see this part here, drop down with text. So if you click on this drop down, you will find file option. So select this file option. Here you will give name of your parameter, so whatever your API is accepting as a name of this file parameter. Then next you have to select file which you want to upload. Let's say if in this case I want to upload an image file, and that's it, and you can send this request. You can pass any other parameters as usual and just send your request. Now one thing to notice here is about headers. In header you will see that after selecting form data, content type header is automatically added by Postman. So there is no need of adding header, content type header from here. It's better to keep it automatic. So you can just ignore this part and just rely on your Postman to automatically detect appropriate header. We will learn how to send current timestamp in Postman's GET request and POST request. So first we will check a GET request. So here I have an example where we have this API and which accepts date parameter, and in date parameter we have to pass current timestamp, but manually it is difficult to pass current timestamp. So we have to write a simple script to emulate or to simulate a current timestamp. So manually it will be basically just a simple timestamp which you are passing, but to pass a current timestamp we have to write a simple script something like this. So go under pre-request script, and on line number 1 you are saying that we have acquired moment. So moment is a JavaScript object, so just write this line, variable moment and acquire moment. So now in this moment we have timestamp, and we will set one environment variable. You can set global or local environment variable. For this example we will set a global environment variable named current date time. So environment variables are here on top right corner of your screen. You will see this eye icon. Under this eye icon, under globals, you can create new environment variables. Just click on edit button and you can create any number of environment variables. So here we have current date time environment variable. So this environment variable we will set with the value of this moment, which is current time, and we will format without any parameter. So let's run this request and see what happens. Save this request and run. So now you can see that we have a current timestamp. Now it is 2309. So we have sent this current timestamp, and this is not a UTC's timestamp. This is local system timestamp which we are sending. So this is how you can send timestamp dynamically, the current timestamp to your GET request. Now we will learn how to send current timestamp in POST request. So we have example of this API. It is a POST API, and in this POST API we have a date field where we want to send current timestamp. If we send manually, you will have to type your timestamp, which will not be close to current timestamp. So we will have to write a script. So you simply have to go into pre-request script. Under this tab you have to write a variable moment and acquire moment. Moment is a JavaScript library. And after that you have to set a global environment variable or any local environment variable is fine. You have to set an environment variable, like for example I have this current date time environment variable. You can create such environment variable and write this same syntax without format, and that's it. Save this request, and after that you have to go into your body part, and instead of sending request hard-coded date and time, you can just replace it with such placeholder in curly braces, and this is the current date time. So just send this request. The current date time is a global environment variable, if you remember here. And now let's see what has happened when we send this post request. So here is my post request. If I go under body, you can see that we have current date and time stamp here for this parameter, which comes from the script. So in this part we'll learn how we can format this current date timestamp. So there are different formats which are available. Now we will try a different format, just ddmmyy, there is no time. And if I send this request, you can see like the format has changed and there is no time, just date. There are many different formats available for moments library, as you can see on your screen. I will share this link in description, and you can try out formats or use any formats which are required for your APIs. Now we will see how to send different time, future time or past time in your request. So if there is a requirement to send a 10 minutes previous time or 10 minutes future time or time difference by hours or days, you can easily do that with a script. So let's first send this request, and now you can see this is the current timestamp if I'm not doing anything, just the original request. But if I make a simple call to subtract method and I'm removing 10 minutes, so going into 10 minutes past, and once again send this request. So now you can see that the current time was 23:20, and if I subtract 10 minutes, now it is 23:10. If I subtract 15 minutes, it should be 05. So you can also change this by hours, like if I want to subtract 1 hour, you can subtract hour, minutes, seconds, anything. And instead of subtraction, I can also use addition. So if I use addition, we will have the future time. So by this way, you can either send a future or past time in your API request as per the requirements. We will see about environment variables. It is use of environment variable and how to use environment variable. Environment variables are used to store and reuse values within request or within Postman script. We will see this with example how these values are actually stored and how we can use it within our request. So let's get started with actual demonstration. So on your screen you can see one get type of a request, which is trying to get some information from server when a page variable is passed with 150 as value. So you can see I get some response when I send this request. Now in top right corner you will see this environment quick look icon, a eye shaped icon. If you click on this icon, you will see that there are no active environments, and you will see that there is one environment and another is global. These two things are actually scope of environment. If you set a global environment, it will automatically get reflected in each and every place within your Postman. If you select environment, add an environment type scope, the variable, when you set this variable, you have to select scope from this option. So we will just go ahead with first type of scope and we will click on add. So I will create my sample environment here, just name it, and then we have this variable. For this request, I know that this request reqres.in base URL, it is same for all different requests. Like if I go for post, this part base URL is same, and it's same for get. I can go ahead and just change it with some different value, such as base URL, and I will set this as an initial value, and that's it. Initial value and current value is same because we just want that same value. Initial value is first time whatever we set. Current value is when we change value, we can set for per request, that is current value, but for our case it is same. So just go ahead and save, and now we can use this variable in our request. How it is used, that I will show you now. Just remove this part because we know that this part is now pointed by a variable. We have saved a base URL variable here. So base URL is equal to this. So within this Postman, instead of writing this entire HTTPS, we can just write base URL in double curly braces. But here you can see we are getting this red color error, that is, this is unresolved variable. To resolve this variable, you just simply have to go into this top right corner once again and select this variable, environment variable, sample environment. And now if you click on this icon, you will see that base URL is equal to https req.res.in. and if you hover over this base URL, now you can see that your current value is actually the base URL value will be replaced with https req.res.in. Now let me go ahead and try sending this request. Yeah, we got a response. Let me change this. Yes, we are getting the response from the server. Even if you try and make a curl request for this Postman request, it is still properly created because this environment variable is replaced with value of that environment variable. If I have another request within same collection or in any collection, I can just go ahead and replace this part with this, and now I even have a post request with the environment variable, and done. Okay, now I will just give you one example where in your project you can use environment variables. So let's go into edit environment variable options once again. So let's say this base URL is QA base URL. So base QA URL, for example, and you also have dev environment or some other environment. Let me call it dev environment for this example, and which has different URL. So dev URL, and we can assume that that URL is something like dev.reqres.in, right? And I will just save it here. So if I just change, so this was my QA. So now I have this way of changing this entire request easily from QA to dev environment by just changing this variable. So when I write this base QA URL, this request will go to QA server, which is pointing by this variable. If I change it to dev variable, this request will go to dev server, which will be pointed by dev.reqres.in. So this is one of the use of environment variable. Even parameters can be set as environment variable, or headers can be set as an environment variable. I will show you one more way of creating environment variable. Let's say you want to have environment variable for this page parameter value. Just double click on this value and click on set variable. So now this is your 151 is value, and you can give name as page to this variable. Select scope. As I said, a global scope is for entire Postman, and you don't have to explicitly select environment from here. For this example, we are using environment scope, so I will set it into environment and set. So you can see that 151 is replaced with page and double curly braces, and in runtime value will be replaced by 151. Let's go ahead and fire this URL. I will just fall back to the correct environment variable which has correct server URL, and I will send this request. So you can see that we can still get a request, and even a curl is created correctly. There is an advanced use of environment variable which is used in scripts. So you can also access the environment variable or set environment variables with scripts in Postman. Right side you have few snippets example, and I will just show you one of the example set environment variable. So here as well you can select for any of the environment and set its value, and you can see that our environment variable from this setting has been changed with environment variable which we used in script. So script has higher precision. You can also get environment variable, replace environment variables with the help of script, which is a little bit of advanced tutorial which I will create later. So we have covered some basic high level understanding of environment variable in this tutorial. We will learn how to do a API testing using Postman. To write a test case for the API using Postman, you have to find this test tab on your request. Here I will just write one sample test and send this request. To see result, you have to find this test results on bottom response area, and you can see that your test has passed. So we'll go through details of how to write test in this tutorial. Before that, we will discuss what does it mean to test API. For example, this is my API where I send one parameter page 150 and I get some response from server, a JSON response. According to specification, when I send 150, I should get some information for this page 150 where, let's say for example, total should be 12, per page should be 6, total pages should be 2. These are your API specification. In API testing, we have to write test cases to make sure that we get expected response. Let's go ahead and learn some common test cases which are written by API QA and API developers. To test response, you need this response of server into some object. And in case of Postman, it is a JavaScript object. It is very simple to get that response. So you just have to use this PM object, which is a predefined object which consists request and response for every API. You can parse this JSON into any variable or a JavaScript object. This variable we will use for all our next test cases which we will be checking. In our first test case, we will try to assert values of fields in response. So here is test case. We are again using this PM object, and you can see that this from PM object we parse JSON and get entire JSON into this response object. And with this syntax of pm.expect, which is a standard syntax for this test case, we can pass that for JSON, our expectation for page field value is 150, and we write this one line for that purpose and send this request. Now in test result, you can see that our test has successfully passed. We asserted for 150 and in response we got 150. Similarly, you can write test case for every field. Let's see example how to write a test case for multiple fields. So it is pretty straightforward and easy. You just have to check for a different field. Like in this example, I am checking for page and total should be 150 and 12. And if I execute this test case, it should pass. Next, we will see how to test response status code, which is fairly easy. You just have to check with this syntax pm.response. You must be wondering what is this 2.have or 2.eq1. These are actually chai assertion libraries which you can use. I will share link of this library in description, and there are many more other methods which you can use for assertion purpose. You can also check for response status from a list of response status. Let's say for example here I have 200 and 201, and if any of one response is written, my test should success. So I will just use this method of chai assertion library. You can even check status message with 2.have status method and just pass the status string. If you see on your screen 200 OK, so OK is actually status string which we are trying to check from this test case. You can write test case for header as well. So headers are in this part of response. Usually you can test any header which is actually in specification. As per requirement, you can consider which headers you want to test. You can also have your test assertion against the environment variable. In this example, I have this page 150 as a response field, and a request field is also page which I am passing 150, and this is environment variable value. So we can check that your response page is equal to value of request parameter. For this assertion, we are using pn object and trying to get page field with this syntax, and we are trying to check equals with page val. Page val is actually value of page value environment variable. So this is syntax to get environment variable value. Let me quickly show you what is value of this environment variable. So this is page value and its current value is 150. Page value is expected to be 150, and this test is expected to pass. Let's go ahead and send request and see what happens with our test cases. Okay, so we will go to result, and you can see that 6 out of 7 test cases are passed and 1 is failed with this error message expected 150 to deeply equal 150. So this is most common issue faced by many developers and QAs, and the reason for this failure is because environment variable stores value by default in string. So page val is a string and page is not a string. So we are trying to compare number with a string, and that is reason we get this error. To solve this error, we have to simply parse this environment variable value into integer. Let's parse this environment variable into integer, and for that we have this simple JavaScript method parseInt, where we will convert this string into a number that is integer. Our test should ideally pass. Let's go ahead and check. Okay, so you can see that now that our test has successfully completed and all tests are pass. I will show you one more common error which usually developers and testers will face. That is if you give a wrong field value. So my response body has page, but if I try to get something like page 1 and send, your test case will fail with an error expected undefined. So that means that this field is not present in page body. So be careful about this kind of mistakes, and if you get such kind of failure, then now you know that what thing you have to check. Also, our assertions are test case sensitive, like okay and this, like small case okay and uppercase okay are not same, and your test case will fail. One more bonus tip, Postman itself has provided some common test cases which you can easily create. For example, if you want to check the response time of your request, you can just find this in your right side of test tab into request time. If you click here, a test is automatically generated. Similarly, you can explore some other tests, simple tests which are already provided by Postman, and you can write much more complex tests with such script to go and check anything in your response body or in headers and even in cookies. I hope this video helps you understand what is API testing using Postman. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to write them down in comment section. Thank you very much for watching this video. We will see how to debug request and response from your Postman. Debugging helps especially when you want to check values of environment variable which are actually sent in the request. Postman client provides an inbuilt console which you can find at bottom of your Postman. This is console area of Postman, where you can see your request response and easily debug what all values are actually sent to the server. Let's go ahead and demonstrate it. On your console, you can see that we have this all information for this particular request which I just fired. And this information is divided into 4 parts: network, request header, response header, and response body. You can see this is request URL. Page parameter is set to 150, which comes from environment variable. So now we can confirm that our environment variable is working as expected. You can ignore network part, which usually we don't use. Here you can check different request headers which you are sending. If there are any custom request header, you can see that from this option. Here comes response header, which are also available over here. And here is response body. These are all default logs printed by Postman on console. There might be a case where you want to print values of request, parameters, or response on your console for debugging purpose. You can do that by writing simple script under test tab. So on your screen you can see this script. Console.log is syntax for printing anything on console, and then you can just get environment variables or any fields from your request or response using the PM variable. So here is one sample for printing the environment variable, which is pm.environment.get method, and pass your environment variable name. And in line number 3, I am trying to print page from the response. This is syntax to get page. From PM object we are trying to get page field, and I'm converting this page field into string using json.stringify. Now if I hit this request, you can see that there are additional 2 lines: value of page parameter 150, value of response field page 150, which comes from this script which we have just written. There are few options on this console which you can select or deselect. For example, this timestamp. You can remove this timestamp or keep it for your debugging purpose. Hide network will hide all the default logs and just keep logs, custom logs which you are writing on your script with console.log. And here is a clear button by which you can clear all your logs which are printed all. We will learn how to set value of a JSON body from a pre-request script. So you can see I have an example of Postman echo request. It is a post type of request, and I have this field shop ID which has some string. So if you send this request, you can easily see that this will be basically a request body part which we are sending to the server. From console log I can show that. But what if I have to set this value from environment variable? So you can do it very easily by writing a simple script. Here is the script. So you have to set a variable, collection variable, and my variable name is a shop ID, and you can give any ID. So here I am giving technocrats shop_1. Save this request. Now we will have to make a small change in the field in JSON body. So instead of hard-coded value, we will replace it with a placeholder, and this placeholder should be written in double curly brackets and your environment variable name. This is environment variable which we are setting from the script. So it will get value from the script. And make sure that you have double curly brackets for your script, not a single curly brackets. Now let's clear this console part and send this request once again. Okay, now if we see in console request body which we are sending to server, you can see that environment variable which we are setting from the script is actually sent in the Postman post request JSON body.
We will see how we can export our collection, all the test cases, all the requests into a JSON file. This JSON file can be used for executing from Newman, the CLI client, or it can be also used to share your test cases or your collection, your request with other team members. You have to find the three dots over here and you will find an export option. It's pretty easy. Go with the collection version 2 and just click on export. Then you get a pop-up asking you for saving location. I will just save it on desktop. I already have test.json. Okay, replacing it. Now you can see that I have already exported my collection successfully. Now we can run this collection directly from Newman CLI. Let's see how we can do that. Now you have to go to the path where you have exported your JSON file, the Postman collection. Now we will just run a simple command from Newman utility. It's Newman run and pass the file name. My file name is test.json. Let's enter. Okay, the tests are now executing. The collection is executing actually. Let's go and see what all things we have. We have collection name, we have environment variables name, we have all the users like create user, get user, the summary of executions. If I'm printing anything, I had console.log. You can even see that it's printed here. You can finally see the summary of all the test cases, time taken for execution, and other details. That's pretty much all for running a collection from Postman CLI. Hope it helps.
Hello, in this tutorial we will learn about monitors in Postman. We will try to understand uses of monitors. We will also run a monitor and try to analyze its result from a demo. Monitor feature of Postman is used to monitor your APIs. This monitor will help to schedule execution of test. This scheduled execution of test can be set into per hour execution or in a frame of few hours or a daily execution. After execution, you will get notified with an alert email in case if there are any test cases failed. So in short, we can say that monitor help you to track health of your APIs. Let's go ahead and see the demonstration of monitors. For this demonstration, we will use our collection which has two requests, a post and a get request, which will create a user and try to get a user. I have written two simple tests under each request to check the return status when we hit this request. If you check on left side of your Postman, you will find a monitors option. In monitors option, you can get an option to create a monitor right from here, or you can use the plus button over here. So let's go ahead and create our first monitor. You have to name your monitor. So let me name it as a sample monitor. We have to select a collection which we want to monitor. So now as we decided to use this collection, which we just saw. Next is selecting version tag. Since I don't have any Git integration, so I can just select current. But if your project is already using a Git integration, you can see a latest tag or any tag which you want to monitor. Next option is environment. So this collection, if requires any environment, then you have to select that environment. For my collection, I require this environment, so I am selecting this environment. Now next is the important section where we have to schedule this monitor. So scheduling is either hourly or weekly. We don't have minute timer option in a free plan, so I cannot select it. For this example, I will select per hour monitoring. You can select different hour range. I am selecting every hour. Next option is about selecting regions. Since there are many very limited options in a free section, we cannot change this to manual region. So we will just keep it whatever default option is. Next is about setting email addresses. We can set up to 5 email addresses in the free plan where you will get alert in case any test cases will fail. Next are some configurations which you can use for modifying behavior, like stop notification of test. So if your test is consecutively failing and you don't want to get repeating alerts, you can stop it from here. This is important in case of billing, since under paid plan the billing will basically limit your number of alert emails or number of requests. Even in free plan the number of requests is only 1000. Next option is to set retry if run fails. So this is again optional if you want to retry your monitoring step or not. Next is setting request timeout or delay. These are quite easy to understand options, but I will leave it as it is for now. Let's go ahead and create our first monitor. Now you can see a run option on screen, which is used for manually triggering this monitor. If I hit this run, a monitor will run manually and we will get result of our test cases. This monitor is configured to run every hour. So after 1 hour, automatically this monitor will trigger our request in collection and we will get result. Let's go ahead and run this manually and see what happens. Now you can see on your screen that sample monitor has already executed and our status of all APIs is healthy. So our tests are all passed, so it is green and healthy. You can see a couple of details like time when this test case was executed, the time taken for execution of test cases and result of each test case. You can also see detail log on console about what happened during execution of this monitor. There are a couple of filtering options which you can use to filter out this result. I can rerun this monitor and check result. Again, it is healthy. Now I want to go ahead and show you what happens in case if any of the test case fails. So I will purposely write a test case which will fail. Let's go ahead and run this test through monitor, and now we know that this test is supposed to fail. So let's see what happens. Okay, here you can see that status is now unhealthy. So our API is failed and you get details of failed API, the time when it was executed, time taken, and you can also see which test actually failed. So 50% is success and 50% is failure. And if I go into this test results area, then I know that this get request has actually failed. The test of this get request has actually failed. Here on your screen you can see the type of email you will get when a test is failed. This email will have all details about the failed test and total execution of monitor. You can also edit your monitor from an option which is located on right side over here. Just click on edit and you can change things over here if you want to change timer or anything and update it. We will see how to call API with different parameters using CSV file. So for this video, our request has this one parameter called as page, and we pass a number, a page number, for example here 150, to this API, and if you call this API you will get some information related to that page. If I call some another number, for example page number 2, I will get information for page number 2. So as you can see, we are just changing page value one by one and making multiple calls to this API, and we see only that particular response for page which we are passing. But what if I have 10 different pages or 100 different pages, and for all those pages I want to have some test case executed. For example, I will pass 10 different pages and I want to check that status code of all these 10 pages is 200, or we can have some any other test cases for that matter. So in that case you will have to every time change value and call this API. That is one way. Or you will create collection of different requests with different page number. That is another way. But these both ways are not recommended and they are very time consuming and manual. So there is another way by which we can call this API with any number of different values, and that values we will be passing from a CSV file. So let me show you the request. So there is a small modification we will have to do for this request. So this is your request, any request which you have, and then you have parameters. So for our example we have parameter page. So you can see I have changed this page equal to, instead of number we have double curly brace and page val a placeholder. So let me explain what exactly is this part which we have changed, double curly bracket and page val. So for that you have to open a collection runner which you can open from your folder from here, like click on folder, you can open from here, or at bottom you have runner option. So just click on this run option. So we are not interested in this request, that is a single item request. So just let's ignore that request and our request of interest is get end time, so basically this request. So now we have this runner with this request, so this collection runner will only execute this request. And if you go into right side of this collection runner, you will see iterations. So iterations is how many times you want to run this collection runner. So let's say I want to run it 1 times. And delay, how much delay you want to add between two requests, you can add that delay in this part. If you want 5 millisecond, 100 millisecond, if you want 1 second, anything you can add. And next option is a data option, where you can see a button select file. So this is important option for our this tutorial. If you click on select file, now I have this input file.csv. Now let me show you what this input file.csv is. So this is one simple CSV file where I have a column with name page val, and then I have 10 different numbers. So these are my page parameters. So I want to call API page with page parameters, this 10 page parameters. So we will just select this input file in this data option, and here you have option to select CSV or JSON. So there is two way to pass multiple request parameters. This example is CSV. You can also use JSON file. I will create another video for JSON file. It's very similar to this. So we'll go with CSV. So if I preview this option, I can see all my 10 request parameters here, right? So now we will just go ahead and run this. Let me also open console. So as you can see on your console, we are calling this same API, like this API, and instead of page val, instead of this part, we are replacing all numbers from our CSV file. So like this, you can have any number of parameters. You can have multiple parameters. If there are 4 parameters, you can have 4 columns, and for every column you will have some name, like this page val. You can have any date or anything, and you can read that file, that data from our file. And if I go back to our runner, you can see that all the 10 iterations have completed and our test has passed, as it has written 200 for everything, right? So we have 0 failed test, 10 passed test. So that is it about passing different parameters to our API and running through collection runner. You can add any different test cases.
We will learn how to share test cases among multiple different requests or even with different collections. For this demonstration, I have 3 different requests here: create, update, and get. The traditional approach would be you just rewrite the same test cases in each request. Now we will learn how we can actually write it once and share with different requests. Before that, let me hit this request and show you that we have 6 test cases here. Don't care about the result. Step 1 for sharing these test cases will be you have to encapsulate this all request within a function. The syntax of function is something like this. This is a base tests, that the function name. You can just cut and paste this test cases within this function. So now all your test cases are basically in this function, and if I try to run this request again, you will see that test cases are not executed because now we have a function for this test cases. If you want to execute this test cases, you will have to call this function. You can see test cases are executed. In step 2, we will set this function as an environment variable so that we can use this variable in all different test cases. We will just create one environment variable, call it base test, and then you convert your function into a string to save it as a string. So now if I call this request, you will see test cases are not executed. That's fine, but if you focus on environment variables and go into this environment variable, you will see our test cases have been written here. This means that we can use this environment variable in any different collections or request. Step 3, for calling this test cases from this request, you just need to call eval function. Eval is a JavaScript function which actually gets the text code of the JavaScript, which is this function in this example, and it will evaluate and execute it. So let me show what happens when you send this request. So you can see tests are being executed now. Now it's pretty easy to share this test cases with different requests. You just need to copy and paste this. You don't need to write all the test cases. You just need to use this one line eval, and you use this environment variable. And now when I call this request, you can see 6 test cases I invoked. I can do same with the third request, and you will see like all 6 test cases are been invoked. You can even go into different collection. Let's say this is a different collection, and I'm removing this test and just adding this eval function, and you can see we have executed 6 test cases.
So in this tutorial, we will be looking at what is Postman collection, how to create Postman collection, how to run a collection, how to check results of collection, and most importantly, we will be seeing how to chain a request in collection. We will see everything with a demonstration. So first, let's start with what is collection. Collection is way in which you can organize and group different requests. So you can see on my screen, I have a screenshot of our demo where I have this Technocrats Postman tutorial collection. Under this collection, I have 2 folders, dev and QA. And under QA, I can have multiple requests. Here I have 2 requests. You can also watch a detailed explanation of collection in my another video, which I will be linking in description. Let's see how we can create a collection. So there are 2 options. One is create a new collection, or you can import a collection. In my collections video, I have explained in detail both these functionalities. Our next topic is how to run collection. So now I will show you a demo of how to run a collection. On the screen you can see that we have a collection, and under collection I have 2 folders, dev and QA, and under QA folder we have 2 requests. One is a post type of request and another is a get type of request. Post will create a user, get will get user by page ID, which we will passing as a parameter. If you are not aware of what this is actually environment variable. I have created sub tutorial video explaining in detail what environment variable is. So please check that video if you are not aware of this part. Now let's see how we can run a collection. You can see that I have a collection under collections tab, and this collections has 2 folders, and under QA folder I have post and get type of request. So this post request will create a user and get request will get that user. I also have some simple tests written for both this request to just check if the response status of this both request is 200 or 200. There is a detailed tutorial in this playlist. You can check how we write multiple different type of tests. So now let's go ahead and see how we can run this collection. So when we say running collection, it will basically run this 2 requests at a time. So just click this run button, and you will see that a run order is given. You can change this ordering. In this case, I want to create user and then get user, so I will keep this ordering, but you can easily change this order by moving this with this icon. On the right side you will see some more options. One is iterations. So iteration is how many times you want to run this. You can run it more than one time. For now I will just run it once. Delay is if you have more than one time of iteration, you can add a delay between every iteration, which is in milliseconds. Next option is data. Data option is used when I want to pass different value for every request. So let's say this page value I want to pass from 1 to 100. In that case, my iteration will be 100, and I will have to select a file, Excel file, which will have 1 to 100 IDs, which will be basically passed through this setting. Next is save response, which will log all your request and response. Next is keep environment variables. If you are doing any scripts which will modify environment variable, this option will keep that settings according to execution. Next is about stored cookies. If you have set cookies and you want to exclude in this execution, you can remove those cookies. And also saving cookies. So you can ignore these options for now. Let's go into a simple setting and simple run, one time run without any other settings, and just go ahead and run this request. So now you can see that iteration 1, only one iteration and 2 test cases are executed. Both are pass. And let me also show you log. So you can see that this is my latest log. And we on console, we can also check like what exactly request we have sent and what response we have received for both the cases. Okay, so you can also get a summarized view. There were 2 successful test cases and 0 failed. So here is summary of your test. Usually in real projects you will have a lot of test cases, so this summary will help you to see how many are successful and failed test cases. You can run again this test with this simple button, or you can create a new test. So this is all about how to run a simple collection runner. So next we will go into a little bit of advanced topic into collection runner, that is request chaining. Let me simply explain you what request chaining is. So let's say in first step you are creating user, and every time you hit a request you get a new user. Let me demonstrate it. So for example, this is my post, and this is the body to create a request. And if I send this request, you can see that ID will change every time. 207, now it is 410. Now in collection runner, if you want to execute post first, that is create new user, and then try to get that user, right? This is your test, create user and get user, both should be successful. So for this purpose we have to pass this user ID or a page ID in our case dynamically to the get request, and that is actually called as chaining of request in Postman. So first result of first step is input of second step. So let's see a demonstration of how we can do that. So for that you will have to write a simple test. The test is pretty simple. So you have to go into the test tab. Now you know that when you create a user, ID is written in response, right? So what we have to do is we have to save this ID in environment variable, which can be used as an input to this second get request. So for that purpose you have to create an environment variable from here like this, and now I already have this page value environment with value 150, which is the default value. So since you can also create this kind of variable, I already have, so I will not recreate it. Don't save anything. Okay, and next step, as I said, we have to save this value. So we will write a simple script, read JSON response, get and set page value. Page value is basically ID field of this response, and I'm also writing a console.log to print this on console for our debugging purpose. Let's go ahead and hit this request once again, and now you can see that when I execute this post, I have already set an environment variable to 703. Now get should automatically get this new value when we try to execute get request, and you can see that current value under get is 703. So now what we can do is just add a simple test to print what is request of get. So with this line I can know what was actual value passed to this get request from our collection. So now let's save these two tests. So now you know that for chaining of collection we have to basically set a environment variable value which can be used as a request into the second request which we will be calling from our runner. So once again let's go ahead and run this collection. Before that I will clear this console and run. Same settings, and we will just click execute. Okay, so now you can see that in this execution both our tests are successful. Let me show you results. Both tests are passed, and first request created 275 ID user, and automatically second request get request passed page ID as 275. If I run it again, the ID is different, 784. Let me run it one more time. You can see the ID is different. So this is called chaining of Postman request, which you can use in your test cases. Like for example, you have test case where you have to create user and try to find that user and delete user, same user. You can just pass that values from response of one request into parameter of another request. And last topic is about result and console, so which we have already covered. As I said, you can use this kind of logs to have some additional information on your console. And you will see how to convert a curl command into a Postman request. Here is a sample curl command, and usually we can just hit it from our command prompt or terminal and we get a response of a curl command from our API server. But now if you want to run this curl command from Postman, there is an easy way. Let's check it out. Find the import button on the top left side of your Postman. Here you will find number of options. Just select raw text and paste your curl command and click on continue. Okay, so curl command is imported as a Postman command, and you can send this request to server and get a response from Postman. There can be more complicated curl commands, something like this, which has authorization and much more parameters. Even for this kind of commands, the same technique of import will work. You can see that for this command there is an additional authorization header already been generated by Postman. We'll see how to convert a Postman request into a curl request, which you can use from a command prompt or from your terminal on your Mac operating systems. So here is our sample request for this demonstration. So this is a typical Postman UI, and if you go on right side you will find this symbol, a code symbol. If you click on this symbol you will simply find this code snippet, and there are multiple options. If any other option is selected, you can just go and select for a curl option, and then you have this curl request, a curl equivalent request for this Postman request. You can simply copy it from here, copied snippet, and now if you go on your terminal and if you hit from your terminal, you can get response for this request from your terminal. Now similarly we can also generate a curl request for a post HTTP method. So here is a post sample command for our demonstration. So similarly you have to just go into this code option where you can generate code snippet in target, whichever you want to. Our target is curl, so we select curl, and here we have our curl post type of request. So copy this, and once again let's go and try this on terminal. Just simply paste it and enter. As you can see, we have received response for this curl request from server. Now similarly you can try to generate a curl request for delete and update type of request. We will see how Postman generative AI can help you write test cases automatically. You can see Postman window on your screen. Go to the tests tab, and on the right side you will see this logo. If you don't see, just update your Postman because this was released in July 2023 or May 2023. On clicking this logo you will find a text box where you can interact with the generative AI. There are some samples given here. For example, I have this request, API user create request with a body. I'm just generating random first name, and when I send this request I get a response with the random name and job which I have given, and then ID, and then we have created a date. So once again let's go to the test tab, click here, just click on the suggested one first. Let's see what it will do. Add test to this request. You can see it has just added some standard test like response code is greater than 201. We have the fields, required fields, name, job, ID, created at. So this automatic suggested approach of generative AI here has just assumed that all these fields are required. So you can either edit this test cases. It's checking if name is not empty, job is not empty, ID is a non-empty string. So these are pretty much standard generated test cases with some assumption. You can go and edit this test cases based on your API specification. Now we will see if we can write any custom test cases with help of this generative AI. So I will tell it to, let's say, check the created date is today. Let's add test
case to check that created date is today and just enter. Alright, it has added something, created date is today test. Okay, response, it's reading the response, reading the created at field, and then it's getting the today's date and it's comparing. Created date should be today. Wow, that's awesome. And let's see what's the result. Yeah, you can see the created date is today test case is added. So this is one use case. Let's see any another use case. We will try to see if our generative AI can fix the test case. For the name field, it's trying to check the length of greater than 1. I can make it 0. And let's ask it to fix the test cases. Alright, it's working on it. Okay. You can see that it has already checked and fixed from 0 to 1 because it already have some information of this test case, right? Now we will ask to save some field from response. You can see it has generated the code ID field. Let's see if this is an AI in our environment variable. I don't see yet. Let me retry to hit. And yeah, it created. Let's try to see if we can print information. Print name in console. Wow, that's awesome. This is what Postman AI has to offer, and I'm sure there will be probably more things which you can explore and try out with this generative AI feature of the Postman.